So are on the top of Tes Amid Aleph, and we're just gonna reset ourselves in what we said before. That means we're not really on the top. I think that's what we're up to, right? We're up to Maskav Lor Yitzchak Barabi Savrin.
Yeah.
So, or Savrin. So we had said that we had a pasuk of, what was the pasuk? Ella lezevach ribuyehu. The pasuk of Ubasa, what was it? Instead of like we had said before as a klal uprata klal, now we're saying it as a zevach, as a ribuy. So we said maybe it should be whatever you bring should be like it. So we said no, it's more mustaver that when you bring a Pesach shaloi l'shma, it should be something that's similar to the Pesach. So either because it's not the carbon Pesach is eaten by the Bailim, so therefore Shlam is also eaten by the Bailim, or the Shlamim is Kachim Kalim, just like the carbon Pesach is Kachim Kalim. So now the Gemara is going to ask a series of questions of other karbanos that should also be. Why does it have to be B'dafka Shlamim? There's a number of other karbanos that fulfill these criteria. Maskal v'yitzchak were very savro. We said that what you should do with whatever you shechted to, that's what it should be. So we said no, it's more likely shlama. But meiser, the reasons that you gave that it's kachim kalim, that it's nechal, meiser is also nechal, meaning the 10th animal that comes out of the pasture, you have to separate and bring as a carbon as meiser. So why don't we say if it brings a carbon pesach l'shem meiser, it should be meiser. L'may hilchos. So it says, so what are you trying to say? You're trying to say instead of being a shlamim, it should be meiser. They both get treated the same way. They're both eaten, fully eaten. They're eaten by the bailim, and it's brought as it has generally the same dinim as a shlam. So the difference of meiser and regular shlamim is that meiser does not bring nesachim, and a shlamim does, and you also get malchus for if you try to redeem meiser. The Torah says you're not allowed to redeem meiser. So if you do that, or if you try to sell it, if you do that, if it's treated as meiser, then he'll get malchus. If it's treated as shlamim, he won't get malchus. Amar kra ashiri yakodesh zeh meiser vein achar meiser. So and for the Gemara, no, the reason we have a pasuk, it says legabe meiser ha'asira yiyeh kodesh, that when you separate the 10th animal, it becomes kodesh as meiser. To tell you that nothing else can become meiser. So the carbon, it's a direct pasuk to tell you, although theoretically it would have made sense that a Pesach shaloi l'shma could become meiser. If he did it l'shem meiser, the Torah excludes it. Ema shachte l'shem b'chor lahavi k'b'chor. So the Gemara, let's say if he brings the carbon, the Pesach as a b'chor, it should be a b'chor. Again, that's not excluded from the svaras we said before. It's eaten by the bailim, and it's given to a kayan, and he becomes the bailim, and he brings it as a carbon and eats it, and it's kachim kalim. So Gemara says lamayhuch. So what difference does it make if the carbon becomes a b'chor as opposed to shlam? First of all, the loy l'boy nisachim. Unlike a shlam, it doesn't need nesachim. Inami, the less v'likahanim b'char. The less v'likahanim. It should also, the second din is also that it will be given over to the kahanim as a b'char. That's part of the din of a b'char. So the more b'char nami avra mi meiser gama. We learn our b'char from meiser. Good morning, Rafal. We're on Tes Amid Aleph, about 20 lines down. So the Gemara had said before that if someone brings, we said we're talking about the din that if someone brings a carbon pesach shalei l'shma, it becomes a shlamim. And we brought from a ribu in the pasuk that which it becomes we said, why does it become a shlam? And why can't it be if he brings it for something else? So we said a shlam is more mistaver because a shlamim is kachim kalim, and the Pesach is kachim kalim, and additionally, it's eaten by the bailim, and shlam is eaten by the bailim. So Gemara asked a couple of questions. We asked the kasha from Meiser, we asked the kasha from Bechara. Those are also things that are similar to shlamim, that they're nechal and they're kachim kalim. So we said there are psukim that say that if you bring a carbon pesach l'shem ma'aser or l'shem bechar, they are excluded. Zok Gemara, ve'ema shachta l'shem tmura lahavi tmura. This Gemara really needs a little bit of emendation and added explanation, because it says, let's say if you bring a carbon pesach as a tmura, and what does that mean, a tmura? That's not a shame of a carbon. There is such a thing that a tmura is, if someone says, I don't want to bring the carbon that I originally bring, I want to replace it. So he's trying to make this a tmura, but the question is, what is he making it a tmura of? So the Achrayim say that l'shem tmura means l'shem tmura of meiser. And as we're going to see, we're going to have, because the Gemara is later on going to say a pasuk that relates to meiser. So say, if you make a tmura of meiser, let it become tmura. What difference does it make if it's going to be a tmura? So the then is when someone tries to exchange a carbon for when you try to change an animal for a carbon that you already sent, that's tmura. There's a whole mistake about it, and the Torah said that the animal that you try to use to replace the original one becomes a tmura. So we're saying, what happens if you try to make your pesach into tmura? So what's going to be the difference in the din? First of all, if you make something in Tmura, you get Malchus. Inami, so it's a little hard to understand la yimacher v'la yigal. What's la yimacher? La yigal makes sense if we're talking about meiser, like we said before. So then you have the iser, that just like you're not allowed to separate a meiser, it's Tmura also you're not allowed to sell. Zu tmura ve'ein achar tmura. Torah says it should be a tmura, but nothing else should be a tmura. So that's where we know that a carbon pesach that you try to make into a tmura is not going to work. So finally, the fourth possibility, another carbon that's very similar to a shlamim, is when someone brings a shechsen animal as a taida. That means he shechs it, having in mind that he wants it to be like the carbon that you bring as a thanks to the owner.
Haven't we said that a taida is a shlamim, but a shlamim is not a taida?
We didn't say they're the same. We said if someone brings a taida l'shem shlamim, that is going to be kosher. It's not considered shalai l'shma, but we said the other way around. The shlam can't be called.
Right, that's what I'm saying. A taida
if he's saying it l'shem taida,
yeah,
we're saying why not? It means what we're saying. L'chayr should be that if you do it l'shem taida, it should become a taida, right? This carbon, we're talking about a carbon pesach here, right?
Right.
Doing it l'shem taida. So saying it's similar enough, it fulfills the basic qualifications that it's kachim kalim and it's nechal. So why don't we say, instead of it becoming a shlamim, let it become a taida? Yeah? Taida and shlamim are not the same thing. They're not identical. It's just that a taida is considered like a subcategory of a shlamim, in that if you call your taida a shlamim, it's still good. But the Ma'aser has different than in a shlamim, as we're going to see. L'may hilchasa. What would be the difference if we recategorize the Pesach as a taida? Latinu lechem. A taida requires loaves, like 40 loaves of bread to go along with it, and all of a sudden you're going to need that for your Pesach. Zakt Gemara, that's not possible. You can't contemplate such a thing. Miyaka midi the Pesach gufa le'boy lechem u'moiser boy lechem. How could it be that the carbon Pesach itself doesn't bring any lechem with it? Lechem could be even it doesn't have to be chametz. It could be matzah. And now you're saying that if you don't bring it as a Pesach, now you have to add on that it brings it's also lechem. So the Gemara says, if that's your problem, if you're saying that you can't upgrade the Pesach to something that has additional requirements, the Gemara is saying like a svara that it has to be something that has lesser requirements than the Pesach itself. So Shlamim has lesser requirements. When it says Shlam also has new requirements that you wouldn't have needed with the Pesach, that you have to pour out the wine onto the Mizbeach. You have to bring the Zevachim with it. So that's not the taina that Toida can't become a Toida because Toida brings the bread with it. This is what it's saying. If someone were to have a Toida and he can't find it, and he says, you know what? Okay, I said I'm going to bring a taida. I'm going to have to bring another different taida. So he sets aside another animal to be his taida, and then he finds the first one. So he brings the first one, the original one. Now, what does he do with this extra taida that he set aside? So we say it doesn't require lechem. So if you have an extra taida, the din that you have to have lechem with your taida is only the original, not an extra taida. But now it's saying that your Pesach is going to become a taida. Boy lechem, and it's going to need lechem. So he says it doesn't make any sense to say you can't say that just like you say that the moiser of the taida itself doesn't get lechem, so the Pesach is also not going to be able to get lechem, and that's the case. It can't become a taida because the point is, the whole reason why we said Lamai Nafkamina is that a taida has to bring lechem, right? Lamai Hilchas, we're saying it's not a shlamim, instead it's going to be a taida. But a taida doesn't, if you're going to, the whole point of a taida, the difference of a taida is that you have to bring lechem, and now it's saying it's impossible to bring the lechem, so it might as well just remain a shlamim. I think that's what it's saying. Maskov Yemer, Breder of Hillel. So now we're going back to the basic din that we were saying, right? That a carbon Pesach becomes a shlamim. We learned it out from the pasuk. Zevach shlamim lashem. How do we know it's talking about a Pesach after Pesach? Maybe it's talking about rather than a Pesach, it's talking about Asham. Means the only reason we said is because minatzayin karbonai zevach shlam karbonai. I'm sorry, it's the minatzayin karbonai, right? That's where we learned it out from. It's from Ribuya the pasuk. El zevach is Ribuya. Right, so from this pasuk, we're not soin karbonai lezevach shlamim Hashem. So minat soin we said is lezevach shlamim. Maybe it's talking about asham. Asham is also brought from sheep. Amarava amakrav minat soin karbonai lezevach shlam davar shava b'chol hatsoin. It has to be something that can be brought either from a sheep or from a goat. So that is not talking about asham. Asham can only be from actual sheep. When we say minat sayin over here, the word sayin over here does not mean that does not mean sheep. It means the larger group of things that includes goats and sheep. So we say minat sayin, that means either one of them. So Pesach can be brought from either one, while a asham can only be brought from sheep. It says min hatzayin. So we always say when it says min something, that tells you part of it is from the sheep, but not all the sheep. And over here, we're saying min hatzayin means bedafka the Pesach, which is both things. So it seems to be the opposite of the way we usually darshan min. Amrameni hachanami min lahaitzi. Says no, the min over here is coming to be mitzi other things. It's not coming to be mitzi goats. It's coming to be mitzi deliasi ben shteishanim It's coming to tell you that it has to be only a year old can be brought as a Pesach. But Yossi ben a keva, and it can't be brought and a keva. It has to be brought a zacha. So we have, and therefore, but the sign is coming to tell you both. How can you tell me that this pasuk is telling you Ma'aser Pesach becomes a shlom? The pasuk continues on. Later on in that same parsha, it says, but if it's a sheep or if it's a goat, Rashi says we already learned that the Pesach is from a goat or a sheep. So why would the Mishnah, if it's talking about Ma'aser Pesach, tell you again that if it was from a goat or a sheep? We already know that it has to be a goat or a sheep. Zak Gemara, Ahumi Boyle Lecheder Keves l'Rabbis Pesach la'Alya. It's coming to tell you like we learned. The Keves is coming to Mimarba that the Pesach you bring the Alya. That if it comes from a sheep has a certain fatty deposit by its tail, and that is also brought and burnt on the mizbech. So im keves l'rabes pesach she'ivish shnasa. It's coming, and when it says im keves, it's coming to tell you also that a Pesach after it become more than a year old, you separated a Pesach, and he wasn't able to bring it on the original Pesach when it would still have been less than a year old. But now its birthday is on the Chol Hamoed Pesach, and now when it comes to Pesach Sheni, it's already more than a year old. So now no longer can be brought as a Pesach, and a Shlom Haboa Machmas Pesach or a Karban Chagiga l'chol mitzvah Shlom. It has all the dinim of Shlomim. Sheyatanu smicha netzazim u'tnufa chazav v'shaik. That they're going to need the din of smicha and nesachim and tnufas chazav v'shaik, which you don't need. I don't think you need these by Pesach. And then it says kshu'aymer im eis ve'im eis. You have to put in the vav.
All this is saying that, in other words, the Ma'aser has all these new rules.
Well, it's telling you that it's going to be treated as Ma'aser. The Ma'aser Pesach is essentially what's going to be saying that it's treating Ma'aser Pesach as a shlomim. It's essentially telling you that it's treated as a shlomim.
Because it also has in all these reboys.
I'm saying these are basic. These are the dinim of shlomim, and it's telling you that if you have a Ma'aser Pesach, it gets treated as a shlomim. The Gemara in a second is going to ask that this is already our third place to learn out that Ma'aser Pesach is shlomim.
Yeah,
right. That's what's bothering you. We're starting from the hanacha that we're trying to learn out Ma'aser Pesach is shlomim, and we're trying to justify it, and now we came up with a third place that says that ikadin. But in any case, the Brisa continues. And it comes to tell you also v'im eis that a goat doesn't need aliyah. That's the Brisa. So now you bring a new source for the din that Ma'aser Pesach, leftover Pesach, becomes a shlom. Medavu de Shmuel nafka, damar v'shmuel v'minatzayin kabana l'zevach shlom, davar ba minatzayin yeh l'zevach shlomim. From our original, what our Gemara started with, Avu de Shmuel, that he learns it out from this pasuk, and now we're learning out from the second part, the later part of that parsha, when it says, Keves, what is it? Where's the pasuk? Keves who makris kabane v'hekvayis ilfnei Hashem. So saying from Keves who makris kabane. That's what we're learning out, that it's a shlom, that it gets treated as a shlom. Zak the Gemara. And additionally, this is what Rafal asked last night. What about the original pasuk that we had said a few blot ago? It said Sainu Bakar, Baleim Pesach Ba'elam Minat Kvasim and Aizim. So what are we talking about Bakar? Al Mikala Maisa Pesach Sheila Davar Abba Minat Sainu Minat Bakar. Umay Niu Shlamim. Ela Tlosa Kroiksiv. We have three psukim. The Gemara asks directly. We have three separate psukim telling us the din that Maisa Pesach is Kar Shlamim. So the Gemara Chad Le'ivr Zman Ivr Shnasei. One is to tell you after it's after Pesach, so no longer be brought as a Pesach, and additionally the animal is no longer within a year. So it's telling you that that becomes a shlam. And the second one is to tell you the Zman passed by, but it still theoretically could be a Pesach where it's still a year. The animal itself is less than a year old, but Pesach has passed by. That also becomes a shlam. And the third one is to tell you if the Zman didn't pass and not, it's still before Pesach. So this is a bit different from what we had seen earlier from Taisvis. Rashi doesn't learn like Taisvis. He says that before the Zman Pesach, if it's not yet the 14th, so it can't yet be brought as a Pesach, and he tries to bring it as a Pesach, it's going to be treated as a Shlama. Utsrichi. And we need all three. Maybe it's only when it's totally incapable of being a Pesach, like the first din that we said, where both the animal and the time have passed, so it's not able to be a Pesach in any form. If the animal is still less than a year old, the chazi lePesach sheni, it could still be brought out to Pesach sheni. Maybe it doesn't become a shlamim. Because of Rachmana Hanitarti, if we would tell you these two things, but Lamaisa, it's past Pesach, so maybe that's why it becomes a shlamim. Before Pesach. So it's still, if you hold on to it, it could become a Pesach. So even if he now shechs it l'shem a Pesach when it's not the Zman, maybe it wasn't yet precluded from becoming a Pesach. It's just that you shechted it wrongly. Maybe that doesn't become a shlamim. The chazi lePesach emaloi tzrichas. That's why we need all three to tell you that in all cases the Ma'aser shlamim, the Ma'aser Pesach is going to become a shlamim. Okay, now we're going to move on back to chatas. Right? We've learned the halacha first that chatas is going to, if you do it l'shem another carbon, it's going to be pasul, and it's going to be pasul legamri. Not just that it's layel ba'am shechayv, it's going to be pasul. We said the Pesach the same din, and now we just finished. We came to the end of where we learn out the Pesach as well. We got involved then in Pesach becomes a shlamim, that there is to some extent an exception from the din that Pesach is pasul, that it can become a shlamim after the zmanai or not during the zmanai. Now we're back to chatas. Amar Rav Mishmei de Mabuk. Chatas sheshachta l'shum chatas nachshin kshera. If someone brings a chatas, and like we said, chatas shaloi l'shma is possible, but if he does it l'shum chatas nachshin, it's kosher. Chatas nachshin means from the miluim that the Yidden brought by the Chanukas Abayis, each one of the Rosh Avos, the head of each shevet brought. So if it was brought, not that it was brought for nachshin, it wasn't a shini bailim, but rather shini kodesh, that he had in mind that should be that carbon of a miluim, a chatas that nachshin brought, which wasn't for a sin, it was brought as a dairin, as a gift, as a nedava. So it's kosher. That it doesn't make a difference which chatas you have in mind. As long as you have in mind for a chatas, it's going to be a kosher. Yasser Rava Kamala lahashmaitza ezer mishashi l'Rava Reb Shimon Omer kol menachos nikos l'shmang sheretz v'ol l'bayil l'shem chayva. This is what the first few blot of menachos talk about. That this member of Reb Shimon. The Reb Shimon says all menachos that you do the kmitza is similar to the shchita of an animal. A mincha is that when you bring flour as opposed to an animal. So if you're If you do kmitza on a mincha and you do it shaloi l'shma, it's kosher. But all l'bayim l'shem chayva. Not only is it kosher, it goes l'bayim l'shem chayva. Why? Lefi shein hamanachas doimis l'zevachim. Because a mincha is not similar to a zevach. Shakayim it's machvas l'shem machas maseh mechicha l'ashim machvas chareva l'shem belula maseh mechicha l'ashim chareva. Because even if a person says I'm doing this shaloi l'shma, there are different types of minchas. She's tired of my shir. That a mincha, there's different types of minchas. There's a minchas machvas, which is done in one kind of pan, or machashas, which is done in a different kind of pan. One is hard and one is soft. And there's a mincha belula, which has shemen in it, and one that doesn't have shemen in it, which is hard. So when you say I'm bringing a machashas, for example, it's really a machvas. You can look at the mincha and see that what he's saying is not true. So we disregard what he's saying. So therefore, it will be kosher because we disregard what he says. So when the facts show that what he's saying is not the case, so that's what's called maseh mechichanela shichareva. Al bezvachim einakin, but by zvachim it's not the case. Shchita achas lekulin, kabbalah achas lekulin. The avodas all look exactly the same, so there's no indication which one it is. Zrika achas lekulin. It also has the same zrika. So the whole reason why the mincha is kosher is only because you could tell the difference with which mincha you're bringing. But if not for the fact that it's ma'asim show what it is, it would be no good. It would say it's shaloi l'shma. Amai lema zois teres mincha. We have the same. This we said zois teres chatas. It tells you whichever chatas you bring, it's going to be kosher. Let's say the same thing by mincha. Whichever mincha you bring, it should be kosher, without coming on to the fact that maseh mechichanela, that it's evident from the facts. Tarach l'chol hamenachas. El yitmar hachiyit. So Rav Mishmei Mabug must have been saying a different thing. Amra Mishmei Mabug chat is shachta al menashi yiskape ba nachshon ksheru. If someone had in mind not shina kaides, but rather shina bailim, that Nachshon himself, the Nachshon that was there in the midbar, he should get a kapara from this carbon. And kapara l'mesim. So that's kosher because it's a ridiculous thing to say that you're making kapara for someone who's dead. It's as if you said, I want a tree to get a kapara. He's not a person, so that's not a kapara. It's as if you didn't say anything. Why do we say bedafka nachshon? Why did you say he did a kapara? He said if you bring a chatas, having in mind someone who's nishda, that it's kosher. So the time of the mace, it's only because he's a mace. But if it would be a chai that's similar to nachshon with psula, what's similar to a carbon of nachshon? Nachshon at lamaisa was miluim, so we don't have miluim anymore. So what does it mean? He does it l'shem such a carbon. Chatas nazir, someone who's alive, who's not, he can't be bringing a miluim because there's no miluim. Chatas nazir and chatas mitzayra. It's talking about chatas nazir and chatas mitzayra, which are also chatois that are brought not for having done something wrong, but rather for a nazir when he ends his term of naziris, and a mitzayra after he becomes tar, he brings these chatois. Zok the Gemara, Hani ninu. What are you saying? You're trying to say that if someone brings it l'shem someone who's bringing these chatas, it's going to be kosher?
It's going to be it won't be kosher.
No, we're saying.
How come at the time of the mace?
We're saying why we said. Why did it tell us? I'm right. It's only because Nachshon is dead. But someone else like Nachshon, it would be possible. We had said before that the din of a chatas, where it's a shinu bailim, it has to be a shinu bailim for someone else who's bringing a chatas. If you have a shinu bailim of someone who's bringing another carbon, it's kosher. And this, we learned that from a pasuk earlier, and this is not a chatas. This is a oila. It's not actually an oila, but it's in the same category as oila, that it's not brought for a kapara. So taka, it should be kosher. So what he's saying, it's coming. We brought nachshon to tell you the nachshon would be possible. Chai dumya nachshon would be possible, but it shouldn't be possible. It should be kosher. Elliot Mahachid, Shmei the Mabuk, Chatas Shachta Al Shemachuyev Chatas Kanachshin Kshera. It's like a kosher. Chatas Nachshin Oilhi. And the reason is, like we just said, so we're turning it exactly around. It's saying Shemachuyev Chatas Kanachshin is kosher because it's a Chatas Nachshin, is an Oila, so Chatas Mitzayro or Chatas Nazir would also be kosher. If he had in mind someone who's bringing Chatas Nazir or Chatas Mitzayro. If he does it l'shem chatas nachshin, it's possible. Chatas nachshin oilahi, because chatas nachshin is an oila. That means he didn't do it l'shem the person who's bringing it, but rather he did it l'shem the actual chatas nachshin, because chatas nachshin itself is an oila. So he's doing it l'shem an oila. Chatas brought l'shem oila. Not, again, back to Shini Kodesh, not Shini Bailim, then it's possible. You have to keep in mind, right? Because it switches. If you're talking about Shini Bailim, then in order for a Chatas to be possible, it has to be a Chatas L'Shem, a Bailim that's bringing a Chatas. If you're talking about Shini Kodesh, what he actually is having in mind for the carbon to be, then it depends. If it's a Oila, it's possible. If it's L'Shem Chatas, we're going to see it depends on how similar the Chatas is. Why do we say he did it l'shem chatas nachshin? Let's say chatas nazir mitzayra. Ikka chatas nakat. We said once we're talking about shini kodesh. We're saying the chatas nachshin, which was the first such chatas. Amarav chatas chaylev shachta l'shem chatas dam l'shem chatas avodas kechavim kshera. If you bring a chatas chaylev, which is the standard chatas for having done something in Isser Karas B'Shaygig, and he did it L'Shem Chatas Dam for a different Karas Isser, he had to bring a separate Chatas for that, or for a Chatas of Avodas Kechavim, Kshera. L'Shem Chatas Nazir, L'Shem Chatas Mitzayra, but if it's a Chatas, which is, like we said, is like an Oila, Psula. Hani Oilas, those are Oilas, those are an Adava, not an Adava per se, but they're not brought as a Kapara, so therefore they're treated like oilers. They're treated like he's not having in mind the chatas, he's having in mind a different carb. Boy Rav, chatas chel shachtel l'shem chatas to tumas mikdash ugdasha mao. What about the chatas of tumas mikdash ugdasha, which we said is a carbon oil of a yair? Is that like chel of adam, which is a similar to a chatas, and therefore it's part of what the pasuk said, Torah achas l'chol chatayis, or do we say that no, because it's oily. Mi amrinon karas kamaisa. It's a karas just like chaylev and dam and avodah zara, and therefore it's included. Dilma ein kavua kamaisa. It's not. It's a carbon oil yared. It switches depending on how much money he has. In that case, and therefore it's not like the other carbon, other chatas. So that's Rava's question. Ravacha breda Rava masni kulu lepsula. Ravacha, the son of Rava, he learned that he's saying that everything is possible. That means it does, even if he does a chatas chaylev l'shem chatas dam, that's going to be possible. My time of a shachar oisel chatas claim oisa chatas. He darshans it not that it has to be any chatas. A chatas chaylev l'shem chatas dam is still going to be kasha, but it's going to be considered the same thing. But unless it's l'shem oisa chatas, it's going to be possible. Amalei Rav Ashi l'Ravacha brei Rava by the Rava heichim masnisula. How are you learning this baya of Rava? If you're saying that anything you do is going to be possible, any change, so Rava seemed to have a question if something is considered to be the same thing or not. So where are you going to say this question of Rava? What did you have as the nusach of his question? Amalei anan b'shinu ba'ila masninla. I learned it as a question of b'ila ba'ila. V'halki masninla. Amar Rava. Chatas chaylev shachta al misha mechuyev chatas dam, v'chatas avay zichavim psula. Al misha mechuyev, right? We said a chatas has to be brought l'shem another person who's also bringing chatas in order to be possible. So he said, if you do it l'shem chatas, someone else who's bringing chatas dam or chatas avay zichavim, it's possible because that's certainly a similar chatas. Al misha mechuyev chatas nazim chatam sayir ksheir. Those are certainly going to be kosher, because they're not considered a chatas, so they're considered like an oila. And it will be, in this case, it will be to the benefit that the carbon will not become possible. It will be as if he brought a chatas for somebody who's mechuyev an oila. Abayin lahachi. Someone bought it for a carbon oil of the irid of a mikdash. We don't say the other possibilities of oil of the because those are not karas. But this is the one of the three things of carbon oil of the that's in karas. Miyamin and karas kamaisa. Is it like the other, like dam or like avodah zara, that it also gets karas, and therefore it's as if he did it for someone else who's also bringing a chatas, and therefore it's going to be possible. It's going to be a shinui bailim. Since it's not kavua, it's a oila v'yared. It's not similar, and as if he bought it for an oila, and therefore it's going to be kosher. Take on that we leave as a question. Okay, even though I wanted to learn the next Gemara, we're going to leave that for tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to start our first exposure to pigel, which is a very Yisaidistic Inyan in the second parak and throughout Zevachim and throughout Kachim. Okay, stop over here.
Okay.